It's a brazen, unlawful waste facility, and the EPA have been powerless to stop it.
An industry insider is taking us on an aerial tour to show us firsthand what's really going on around New South Wales. Illegal dumping isn't the only problem.
Look, it's pretty scary. It's a scary industry. There are dark elements in this industry. That's why I'm doing it anonymously.
He's asked us to conceal his identity to protect him from retribution.
Well, the good guys lose business to the bad guys, essentially. That's essentially what it is.
The industry insider tells us the rogue operators are everywhere. Unlicensed facilities, waste being exhumed, stockpiles of asbestos. It's all about avoiding the waste levy charged by governments to legally dispose of waste.
There's widespread scamming of the waste levy, yes.
How many millions of dollars would that represent? Could you put an estimate?
Over $100 million per year is being lost to the New South Wales Treasury by these activities.
One activity in particular has taken off: the interstate movement of waste. Even licensed landfills are doing it.
Caro, this whole situation with waste being transferred from these landfills and material being sent to southeast Queensland is getting bigger. It's getting more organised, and the longer it goes on, the harder it will be to stop. And the regulator has been told time and time again that the longer this activity goes on, the more organised it will become, and the more difficult it will be to undo.
And the biggest names in the business are involved.
The waste that we generate in New South Wales needs to be recycled. And if it's leaving New South Wales, it's not getting recycled, we believe, the way it should be. It does attract a lot.
Bingo is sending around 150,000 tonnes of waste, including contaminated material, to landfills in Queensland, where the levy is non-existent.
So would that pile all be going to Queensland?
Yes, that pile would be.
How often do you have to send this stuff to Queensland?
Daily.
Daily.
Bingo is one of many companies doing it. As night falls, at facilities across New South Wales, the interstate waste trade begins.
Copy on one. Got a truck coming in, bro. Not sure what's there, mate. There's two in front of you. So I'm loading one, I've got two in front of you.
At Bingo, on this one night alone, chatter on the two-way radio reveals 9 B doubles are loaded with waste bound for Queensland. The practice is so lucrative, it spawned a whole new transport and logistics industry in its own right. Middlemen contracted by waste companies to shift waste across the border day and night. Four Corners has discovered there are at least 5 major waste transporters now operating. Who's doing it?
Well, there's a whole new industry that's propped up around it. Individual companies have been formed with this is their business, this is their core business.
Can you name some of those companies?
Some of those operators are not backwards about, how can I put this? I may have fears for my own personal safety if I name those companies.
Why?
Because I'm speaking out and blowing the whistle on something that's going to cost people hundreds of millions of dollars if it's stopped.
So where is all that rubbish ending up? We followed the waste stream all the way to its final destination, to a series of old mine sites in southeast Queensland. From the air, the scale is extraordinary. Massive dumps right next to housing developments. Queensland has become the dumping capital of Australia. We're standing right outside a massive landfill run by a company called Cleanaway. It's one of several in the area of Ipswich. Most of them are on top of old coal mines. Doesn't sound like much of a problem until you see this. There is smoke coming up from the ground and it stinks. It's acrid, it smells of tar, it's very strong. Underneath us, there are fires constantly burning. On top of that, millions of tonnes of waste, including hazardous materials like asbestos. The fear is that that waste will catch fire and release who knows what into the atmosphere. Those fears have been realised. In July 2017, Cleanaway's pit caught fire. Local resident and waste industry activist Jim Dodrell managed to catch it on camera, recording this home video. How would you characterise what's happened to Ipswich?
It's just this giant waste dump, basically, for all of Australia to bring their waste to.
Residents tell us they believe Ipswich Council has handed their town over to the waste industry, approving 5 massive dumps in recent years.
Oh, it smells, it's putrid.
Rotten nappies? That's what it smells like.
Most people describe it as that, as
nappies.
dirty nappies.
Dirty nappies.
We've been the ones out there doing the monitoring. We haven't seen the council or the state government, the EPA, doing any monitoring.
But not once?
Never.
How long have you been monitoring these places?
Since 2011.
The message is that this will all be over in a matter of years. Those big holes in the ground will be full.
Yeah. We might be there in those holes. That's the thing.
Well, the question is what damage, long-term damage is being done in the meantime.
I'm going to put a figure to you. The last figure that we know definitely, this was for the past financial year, was over 500,000 tonnes from New South Wales alone.
Oh, wow.
It's frightening.
How can they do that? How can they think that's okay? All in, for a bit of cash?
In 2014, New South Wales introduced a law known as the Proximity Principle to stop waste being transported more than 150 kilometres. But there were loopholes you could drive a truck through. Industry estimates the amount of interstate waste being dumped in Queensland has almost doubled in the past year to around 1 million tonnes annually.
As we sit here today, there's more than 60,000 tonnes a month that's transported north. We were promised that corporations who transported their waste in defiance of the proximity principle would be fined $15,000 per load, and the drivers would be fined $7,500 per load.
Anyone been fined?
Nobody's been fined.
Not one fine?
Not that we're aware of. There's been no fines, no prosecutions whatsoever.
We said very clear to the industry that we're not going to enforce the proximity principle and that we're looking at having a national approach to having a proximity principle in place.
This email, obtained by Four Corners, was sent by industry to the office of the New South Wales Environment Minister in June 2017. It reveals one Western Sydney landfill is loading waste into shipping containers and transporting it by rail to southeast Queensland, avoiding $17 million annually in waste levy fees. The company behind that Western Sydney landfill is one of the biggest in the business, Dialer Dump.
If you've got excavations, renovations, after-party jubilations, soil or sand and stuff, junk or waste, filling up your place called Dialer Dump, no fuss.
The man behind Dialer Dump is Ian Malouf. The opening of Ian Malouf's landfill in 2012 was a lavish affair. Trucks full of French champagne, oyster bars, tap dancing on skips, spit roasts and lion cubs. Waste has delivered Ian Malouf riches and power.
officially declare open this terrific new waste facility and congratulate Ian again for everything that he's done. Well done.
In public, Ian Malouf has been highly critical of the interstate waste trade.
Been going 4 years now, enough's enough. It's escalating to 1 million tonnes a year, $135.7 million out of the pocket of government, ripping our roads to pieces. So common sense will prevail.
But our surveillance has revealed Dialer Dump is sending waste interstate too. As evening approaches, massive rail containers enter and depart Dialer Dump's depot in Sydney. They're being loaded with waste, diverted away from Ian Malouf's landfill, delivered instead to the Chullora rail yard, sent by train to Queensland, exploiting a loophole in the law. Ian Malouf has told Four Corners Dialer Dump is transporting waste to Queensland to avoid suffering further commercial disadvantage. He declined to be interviewed on camera. Now, he's proposing a giant solution to stem the tide.
Welcome to the Next Generation Project Update.
It's called the Next Generation, a power plant that will burn more than 500,000 tonnes of construction and demolition waste for energy.
We don't have an energy from waste plant, all right? So it's time. It's time we caught up. We will lead the world in this. There's no doubt about it. Number one, we will be the best in the world.
If it goes ahead, it would be the world's biggest waste incinerator. Ian Malouf wants to build it smack bang in suburban Western Sydney. But he's facing considerable opposition.
We have to tell everybody. I don't care. Okay, I don't care if they give it the green light. There's no way in hell this is going to go ahead. I will get...
We'll blockade it.
100 cars in that street. I will blockade that street. I will blockade that site so nothing is going to get built.
Western Sydney residents and local councils are mobilising against the Next Generation. The New South Wales EPA and the Health Department are also opposing it.
I mean, they absolutely are against this, and they said in their submission, and I quote, increased hospital admissions as well as death from heart and lung disease could be caused by this incinerator. So what does that tell you?
Ian Malouf has responded to the community by accusing them of spreading fake news.
And he sends us letters of threats of what will happen and, you know, gives us timelines to respond by.
There's a small minority scare campaigning against this plant. The people of Blacktown, instead of saying this is the worst thing in the world to come to us, they should be proud of it and help us feed the children that have got there with it. And I say it in all honesty, all right?
Garbage businessman Ian Malouf.
The Next Generation proposal is currently before the New South Wales Department of Planning.
This is a major policy issue.
Well, let's get the vote on in Parliament soon. Let's get it done. Let's test these buggers out.
Yeah, well,
the New South Wales Greens are moving to block it.
The proposal as it is actually dirtier than coal in terms of...
Dirtier than coal?
Dirtier than coal in terms of...
That's a big call.
It is.
Really?
It's dirtier than coal in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions.
But the industry describes this as a clean source of energy, as a clean source of power, as renewable even.
Well, that's just total bullshit. You can't tell me that you're going to burn millions of tonnes of plastic, vinyl, concrete, gyprock, wood, and that's clean green energy. It sounds to me like a big, dirty waste incinerator in the heart of Western Sydney, and that the risks, the pollution is going to be utterly unacceptable. It's certainly unacceptable to the residents.
The waste industry is a mess.
It is a license to print money. Like, the people in the street have got no idea at all.
We need to lift the lid on the waste industry and show people what is actually happening and correct it, you know.
We need ministers to bang their heads together and come up with a national strategy, a national coordinated response.
The onus is now on our governments to step in and clean up the mess.